that's one thing about me, right? Like if I had to describe my three best qualities and my three worst qualities, I would say I'm naturally a very, very, very curious person. I have a very curious mind. So I guess that's why I research a lot. But more so, like when I meet someone, I'm curious to know how that person thinks, how that person ticks, why that person thinks what they think. I want to understand their worldview if they have one, because most people, in my opinion, they don't really have a worldview. They just sort of like react to the world. There's not much. They're not like people of substance. They don't have much depth to them, right? They don't have like a what I call a rich interior life. There's not much going on, in their mind. They're just kind of like reacting to life and just going with the flow, and they're very superficial. They're very shallow in terms of thinking. They're not like a deep thinker. And I'm not saying I'm like a deep thinker, but fuck, I mean, I don't want to scratch the surface all the time. Sometimes I want to go a little deeper than the average person. So, yeah, so my top three qualities. I'm very, very curious. And this isn't my opinion, this is the feedback I've got. There's one thing, right? Anytime you want to analyze or judge yourself, right? Assess where you are at life. And because you need an accurate understanding of your position, where you at in life, right? You need to you cannot go based off of what you think. If you want to figure out what your strengths are, it's very difficult because it's hard to see the picture if you're stuck in the frame, right? So you need to do what I call feedback analysis. You need to analyze the feedback you get from people, because that's a closer representation of the truth. Whereas all your opinions and thoughts of you and what you think your strengths are and everything in between is biased. It is biased. Okay, you're always gonna when you take a quiz, you're always gonna be like, oh well, this is the kind of person who I want to be, so I'm gonna tick this box. Whereas it's not the kind of person who you really are. So that's why quizzes are not entirely accurate. Most quizzes, other quizzes are pretty accurate, but yeah. So you need to do feedback analysis. You need to figure out, okay, what have my enemies complimented me on? Because then that's 100% true. Or like family members who you disagree with. What do they say I'm good at? So always get feedback from other people. Anyway, so I've gotten the compliment from people who they know I have a very curious mind. So I would say curiosity is one of my best qualities. Then I would say my charisma. People always like my energy, my authenticity, and I've gotten a lot of compliments with that as well. I think it's because I'm like a combination of like so many different cultures. So like, because what I like to do is when I travel from place to place, because I've lived for almost 2 years in Germany. I've lived for almost a decade on and off in Colombia. I grew up in the Caribbean. I moved to Mexico. I've lived in Australia. I've lived in Thailand. So what I like to do is anytime I go to a new place, I basically sit and analyze people's behavior, the culture, the society, how people interact. And what I do is I take the best from each culture and I try to integrate it into my own life. This is what I think you should do. Like, I would watch a movie like James Bond, and every guy knows that there's certain characteristics that James Bond has that they should try to embody, try to integrate it into their own personality and become the best version of themselves. So let's use that as an example, right? I would watch a movie and I would see, okay, well, this is how this guy moves, right? And I would try to integrate that into my own behavior, my own demeanor, right? So anytime I would travel, I'll be like, I like what this culture does. I'm going to adopt that and try to integrate it through repetition, through practice before, so that it becomes ingrained in my subconscious, so that I don't even think about it. I just act it out. And you only get there through repetition, through practice. So I'd literally travel. I'd be like, okay, guess what? I really like the fact that Europeans, they tend to be travelers. They tend to be free spirits, wanderers, right? I genuinely like that. Like Vikings or Europeans, because Europeans, if you look back at history, they conquered the world. Like the Spaniards, the English, the French, the Portuguese, the Dutch, right? Like Europeans basically conquered. So the Dutch colonized Indonesia. The English colonized, the English colonized freaking everywhere. India, in the Caribbean where I grew up. we were colonized by the English. A funny side note: I mentioned that to a friend, and he was like, "How could you say?" I mean, what do you mean? How could that's the reality? Like, I don't know. People are so politically correct now. Everything offends them, even like history. What the fuck? Anyway, um, where was I? So yeah, Europeans conquered everywhere. So it's like, so now when I travel and I meet Europeans, it's like for the most part, a lot of them, they're travelers. I like that. That's cool. Like they're free spirit wanderers. That's, and then other cultures, like a lot of the cultures, a lot of different cultures in Asia. Um, and I was speaking to some Asians. Obviously not all Asians, right? But a lot of them, they're not really. I mean, maybe you could make the exception for Genghis Khan, right? But for the most part, I think like nowadays, a lot of, again, not all, but a lot of them, they're not really travelers. Like, and I've heard this. I've spoken to a couple people from Taiwan, and other Asians as well from different countries, and they tend to mostly like to spend their time indoors, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Um, for them, but for me, I like to spend my time outdoors. So anyway, the point I'm making is that you notice certain things from different cultures, and I take the best from the cultures I like, and I run with it, and I try to integrate it into my own life, into my own behavior, into my own personality, and then so like out of all the cultures and countries I've been to and experienced, for instance, the friendliest culture that I've experienced, because okay, so in Southeast Asia, I think it's fair to say that most people will agree with me when I say that the Philippines, the Filipinos, they're the friendliest in Southeast Asia, if not in Asia in general, right? They're just friendly people. They're jolly. They're they're positive. Now, mind you, I've been to the Philippines, and yeah, they're very very welcoming. Like I was on the beach, and this complete stranger just he was with friends, and he just invited me over and he fed me. It was so cool. So they're definitely welcoming, and I was like, because it was kind of, if you're not used to it, you kind of like, no, I don't want to impose, I don't want to, but then you realize just part of the culture, and very very friendly, very very welcoming. I love that. So yeah, I would say the Filipinos are the friendliest, most welcoming, kind, loving, genuine people in Southeast Asia, right? And but then I've also experienced the Hispanic culture, the Latinos, and I'm telling you, the most friendly culture that I've experienced is definitely the Hispanics, the Latinos. I've lived in Colombia. I've lived in Mexico. I've traveled to Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia. So I've done quite a bit of traveling in South America, Central America. I've traveled all over the US. And for me, like the culture that has the best, and let's say they're the most friendly, but I would say definitely the Latinos. So because maybe I'm biased too, but I genuinely think that's true. So because I like that, what I would do is I would then try to integrate that part of their culture into my own day-to-day character, my own personality. So it's like I tend to be more friendly and welcoming and positive and enthusiastic, and because that's what I like. So it's like anytime I see something that I like, I try to become that, right? If that makes sense. And yeah, so like with the Latinos, I like this about their culture. Then the Europeans, I like that about their culture. Then the Asians, I like this about their culture. Like, so it's like one thing with Asians, it's like um, they they their appearance matters a lot. Like, and this is I've spoken to a few, right? And it's like they're very very slim, so they take that very very seriously, right? So like that's their beauty standard. So they prioritize their slimness, their figure, right? However they define beauty, that's how they define it. So I actually like that. They don't let themselves go in that sense. for the most part, right? Obviously, there are exceptions, but exceptions don't disprove the rule. I remember talking to so many friends, and it's like, bro, you can't generalize. I'm like, I'm not generalizing. It's just pattern recognition. You need to be able, in order to operate effectively in the world, you need to call it generalized. But I'm not saying don't be open-minded. I'm very open-minded, right? But you need to generalize to some degree. It's called pattern recognition, right? Like, if you've been around long enough, you pick up certain red flags in people, and you kind of go around life effectively and be like, hey, listen, I can't generalize, but guess what? I know that these red flags in a female I should avoid, but I can't generalize. So I'm going to start this new relationship and then just set myself up for a horrible experience because I can't generalize, even though I know that these are red flags I should avoid in someone. Hello. Morning. So you need, to some degree, you need to generalize, you need to recognize certain patterns. And because a lot of your happiness and pain in life is going to come from other human beings. So your ability to read people and know the types of people you should avoid is definitely going to be something that it's a skill, it's a life hack that you definitely wanna wanna do, right? So that's one thing I think most people, because most people, they just want to be politically correct. They don't want to be a realist. And even if they, and maybe it's because they lack life experience as well. Maybe it's because they're just book smart and they're not actually life smart, because I have friends and they have all these ideas and beliefs on how the world should work, and the second you actually bring forward a real life scenario, it literally, their beliefs and their opinions, they just fall apart. So I do think that in life, the quality of your life is the quality of your relationships. And in order for you to have quality relationships, you need to be able to read people to know, because life is short, right? So you can't spend your time with everyone, right? And you need to spend your time with the people who you know are genuinely good human beings, free from any malice, right? Free from what they call exploitative traits. Because, and this isn't my opinion, this is fact, in every society, in every population, there's always going to be a small percentage of people that are, they're born that way. They're psychopaths. They're more exploitative. They have exploitative traits. They're more narcissistic. They're more Machiavellian, right? They smile, but they stab you behind the back, right? And it's just how the world works. So knowing that, you want to avoid these people. Now, when I say avoid, I'm not saying you treat them differently. I'm saying you be yourself, but you don't be naive. You understand how the world works, and you're not going to set yourself up for unnecessary pain and suffering, right? So you smile, you still be yourself, and you treat them, as you would any other person, but you understand that 9 times out of 10, the chances are that they're gonna, you know, is very, very high. So, yeah, because in my experience, you also want to avoid, you want to keep your distance with people who are mentally and emotionally unstable people, because those are the people who will, not because they're bad people, but just because that's how they were born, right? Like, I think it's 0.1% of the population or 1% of the population, I can't remember, but people are going to be more narcissistic. They're going to be psychopaths, and those people are the ones you want to avoid in general.